Welcome to the Political Orphans. My name is Nico Lagan. Normally I'm joined by Rob Ambrose, but tonight he's out sick. But don't you worry. I am joined by constitutional lawyer Shawn Buckley to speak about clone meats and how not the first time that Health Canada isn't labeling produce properly. Shawn is late, so we shall wait for him to show up. But in the meantime, there's breaking news. It turns out that Health Canada is backing away from the decision that it took just a couple of weeks ago. We're talking about 20 days ago. Dr. Sylvain Charlebois, the AKA the professor, the food professor, showed up and admitted that, or he heard that Health Canada was doing that. He broke the story basically a few weeks ago. We had him on the show, when was it, this week, to speak about this. And turns out that because of the outcry, because of the backlash, Health Canada is going to pause. Pause. Just like the carbon tax. Remember that? They're not stopping, they're not backing down, they're just pausing it. And that's exactly what David was saying just before the show started. They love the word pause. That's a psyop tactic to keep you on edge. And all I could think of is Mark Carney with the carbon tax. He never canceled the carbon tax. He just paused it or put it to zero, and he'll be able to put it back anytime he wants. Turns out my guest is here, Mr. Shawn Buckley, constitutional lawyer. How are you doing, sir?
I'm well. How are you, Nico?
I'm good, good. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for keeping me company since my co-host just didn't show up. No, he's sick. He's sick. I'll give him credit. He's sick. But yeah, thanks for showing up. The I was just about to show the update. Did you hear about the breaking news that Health Canada is pausing
Yeah,
the
so I mean,
unlabeling of clone meats?
yeah, and I'm actually glad I saved the page that they posted on November 13th. So I, saved that because it no longer reads the same. And then yesterday, November 19th, they say they're going to pause. And I was overhearing what you said on pausing. I couldn't agree with you more that it's just a tactic. I've been dealing with these guys for 30 years, and you keep hearing the word pause, and then, you turn around and they're at it again. They're not saying they're canceling it. They're not saying, and in fact, if you pull up the page, I mean, they're basically saying this is safe. The science
So
says it's safe. Like if you go to the Health Canada page, where
they took it
they did,
down. They actually took down the page because I was trying to get it about half an hour ago. Could not find
oh,
it
okay. Well,
anymore.
it's good thing I saved that page earlier today too. But if it was still up, I mean, they're basically, listen. I don't know if you read they call it a scientific opinion.
Sure.
And so if a scientific opinion means that you basically just accept without any critical thought is something that you're citing and promote it as if it, a study that you like as, the end all be all. I think it's a now that page is still up. I think it's an example of why we can't trust Health Canada.
Do you see the page right now? Send it to me. I'll
Oh,
bring it up
just hang on. Let me just.
because I was looking for it
I'm at a
earlier and I
different.
couldn't
I'm
find
at a
it.
different computer here. Just hang on.
Because if you look, that I found surprising. While you're looking for this, I wanted to show this because that's about the only article right now that's reporting on it. But they're basically saying that Health Canada has indefinitely suspended plans to eliminate mandatory labeling of foods that come from cloned cattle and swine following considerable public pushback. And that's the important part to me because every time I hear the government doing something because of pushback, obviously I'm happy. Obviously, that makes me happy. But how long is that going to last for? And are they just gonna do it without telling us? Because we did have Dr. Sylvain Charlebois, the food professor, on the show this week, and he's like, I brought it up at the end of last month. Like, he posted an op-ed on Global News, I believe, and he's the one that broke the news. And he's like, they're not the first to do that. Monsanto has a tendency to do that too, right? They will put GMO and stuff and they won't tell anybody. They just don't care to say, because supposedly, as he mentioned it, the science is on their side. So it's very interesting how
Well,
governments are able to do that, because that's a question that I want before we get into the meat and potatoes. Are they even, how is that legal? This is the part I don't understand about this whole thing. How is it legal for them to sell us something that is not what it seems and prevent it from being labeled appropriately? How is that
well,
how is that legal?
here's the interesting part. So, because the real question is should Health Canada exist at all, or should they be allowed to take control over our food supply? And here's where good intentions go wrong. So, like, let's say we didn't have Health Canada. Well, then what we have to rely on is ourselves. And in the past, there'd be examples of people being fraudulent, right?
Sure.
So, so we pass, earlier versions of the Food and Drug Act were quite simple, and they would prevent things like fraud, as our criminal code does, and adulteration, and, basically manufacturing in unsafe ways. Those are kind of the three basic food safety things. You need protection against fraud, adulteration, and in adulteration in the food and drug world means with something dangerous, because fraud covers, lists the ingredients properly, and it's got to be manufactured safely. And, there's no perfect system, but we end up creating this bureaucracy that we actually think is charged with protecting our health. And well, if they're allowing new things into our food supply, it must be safe. And Nico, maybe before I was born, that was the case. Maybe. But I mean, I've been practicing in the area of food and drugs for 30 years as a lawyer. I don't trust a single word these people say. And I've actually crossed the line. I think Health Canada is the most dangerous thing for our health possible. I think Health Canada is the leading cause of death in Canada. And, if you want me to explain why I think that, it's because they have control over our food supply, and it's become as toxic and as dangerous as possible. When you think about it, if I ask the question, is it possible that our food could have more chemicals and toxins in it without the population popping? Like, and by popping, I mean just totally reacting. I think we're there. Like, is it? And it just happened, right? We just reacted over this cloned meat thing. But I don't think it's possible. They've allowed so many dangerous chemicals into our food supply that our food is horrific. And yet all the while we've thought, well, they're protecting our safety. Well, who are they protecting? Like, why is everyone watching this would test positive for glyphosate, and most of us in horrific levels? So who's Health Canada protecting here? Why do all of us have glyphosate? And that's just one. We could go with a list of chemicals that, all of us will test to have in our bodies, none of which are safe. Well, that's happened because Health Canada's allowed it to happen.
So one of the things that you mentioned earlier is that Health Canada in the first place was created to prevent fraud, to prevent dangerous products from being sold. At least that's always the idea, right? Every single time they put a new government a new government entity, bureaucrats in place, it's always for safety. It always is to protect us from ourselves. But yet, the more you look, and the clone meats being the perfect example, they're supposed to protect us against fraud, but they're being fraudulent themselves. So who's protecting us against them?
Yeah, it's broken. I mean, I think they should be disbanded. I think their buildings should be demolished. We should go to, have Tunny Pasture buildings demolished, and, a memorial to those that have been lost. So like, it's that bad. It's that bad. So, I mean, problem number one is people have to take responsibility for their own health. And it's gotten this bad because we've trusted them. Mm-hmm. So that was mistake number one. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know what the system looks like, but part of the problem is, you know, if Health Canada allows something like glyphosate in our food supply, how do you even sue them civilly?
You know, tell me, you're the lawyer.
And how do you start? Well, I'm just saying it's a block, right? Like, glyphosate courts are awarding damages in glyphosate cases for it causing cancer, but you know, how do you say, wait a second, there shouldn't be trace amounts in our food supply? The cancer cases are, you know, not you or I eating, you know, inorganic bread. I mean, even if you're eating organic now, you're getting glyphosate in your food supply. It's just the fact that Health Canada approves things as safe is a barrier for there being any liability in our court system. And let's not even go that you or I really can't access our court system anyway. That's a different thing. But assuming that companies could be held liable for putting chemicals in our food supply, Health Canada is a barrier to that.
So the solution in your case is to disband Health Canada altogether?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're so far gone, so far corrupt. Absolutely. Like, I'm not kidding. In my opinion, and I've been doing this for 30 years. In my opinion, Health Canada may be the leading cause of death in Canada, and that's a different conversation. I'm happy to have it.
I want us to concentrate on the clone meats because it seems, you know, it's one of those things that you always have like a aha moment. It seems like people take it for 20 years and then there's one thing that crosses the line. They're like, yep, nope, that's it. We're not going down that fucking road. Absolutely not. And the word cloned is exactly that, right? People are just outraged. They're like, yeah, no, not happening. I'm not eating this.
Let's talk about the...
But hold on. It's been for sale in the US. Clone meat has been sold in the US since 2008. I didn't even know that.
But just hold on a second. So the FDA is not requiring any label of cloned meat.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, I don't expect that there's been a lot sold, but can we just talk even about what the real dangers of cloned meat are? Because they're not mentioned in Health Canada's scientific opinion. So, you know, to clone an animal, you're basically taking the nucleus out of the cell of the animal you want cloned. So you've taken a cell, the nucleus contains the DNA material, you're pulling that DNA material out of the nucleus, you're taking an unfertilized egg and basically taking the genetic material out of it. You're inserting the DNA that you've taken out of the donor animal, and then you've got to manipulate that egg to accept it. They use electricity, they use chemicals, they use different things to try and manipulate that egg to think, no, I've been fertilized. I'm now a zygote. I'm a fertilized egg. Well, as you can imagine, even from that cursory description, there's a lot of room here for DNA damage, genetic damage. And there is. So a small percentage of those eggs will become viable. And then even the viable eggs, to get an offspring from this, they're prone to genetic defects. They're prone to organ defects. They're prone to other anatomical defects. Well, you can't predict the genetic defects. How do you predict what DNA is going to be damaged? And because you can't predict what genetic damage there is, you can't predict the risk. So if you get an animal to maturity, a cloned animal, as a group, they are more prone to health issues. So they're going to have more hormones in them. They're going to have more antibiotics in them, and they're going to have more other drugs in them. Who wants to eat a cloned animal? Now, to protect us against the risks, if you're going to have us eat cloned animals, you better be screening for genetic abnormalities. You better be screening, for significant anatomical differences that might be creating problems. And you better be screening for higher levels of hormones, antibiotics, and drugs, and excluding those animals that just have too much. But Health Canada is not proposing any new screening at all. Just if the animal shows up and it doesn't appear to be, totally dead, then, the standards really are low. You've got to have an animal looking really sick at the time it goes to the slaughterhouse to be, in theory, segregated and not put into the food supply. They're not suggesting any of this.
Is that not, if we stop cloned meat for a second and we just talk about regular meat? Because last time I checked, 70-ish% of antibiotics in the world, if not more, are used on cattle. Like they're used on cows, they're used on chickens, they're used on pork, because we don't feed them the food that they're supposed to eat. So they have problems. Like cows, for example, have massive problems with their stomach, because unless you're going organic and free range, they're eating grain. They're not eating grass, and grain does not agree with them. So no matter what, are we not eating really, or what's the word?
Unhealthy meat. Listen, if you're why
unhealthy,
are we doing this? Why aren't we? Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. So, it's already bad, and you're just helping me with my earlier point that could our food supply be more unhealthy? So, yeah. But on this cloned meat, it's repulsive. There are unknown risks. And you would think that as a bare minimum that there would be human safety studies.
Is there not?
No. There's as far as so first of all, and I'm fairly confident that the Health Canada opinion document is still up. Now, and if it's not, it will be. And if it's not, just go to the Wayback Machine and find it. It's been there. It's a 2023 document. What's interesting is there's nothing new here. But you would think, Nico, if there were human safety studies, that Health Canada would cite them. But they list all of the reference materials they're referring to, and it's quite a long list. I can't find a single human safety study on there. Now, my research area of expertise is legal research, but I went looking, I couldn't find a single human safety study on cloned meat of any kind. And I would like to think that, if I was in charge, I would require there to be robust and long-term animal safety studies, because I would require those because an ethics board isn't going to allow me to do human safety studies until I've got some pretty well-designed and, reasonably long-term and sizable animal safety studies. So let's do the animal safety studies first. There are no animal safety studies that Health Canada references for beef, or for pork rather, and they reference one small rat study that ran for 14 weeks. I haven't read the study, but it involved beef and milk. I don't know how well designed it is, or, it's certainly short term. There appears to be some other small rat studies for beef, but, only things that could be considered preliminary. So we need to have animal studies first. Then we have to have human studies if the animal studies allow it, because no ethics board would permit human studies unless you've had animal studies. And for human studies, likely they wouldn't permit it unless you're actually screening for the known risks. So you're only allowing people to eat cloned animals that don't appear to have any defects, anatomical or genetic, and aren't filled with, steroids and antibiotics and the like beyond what's, normally in our food supply. And then once you've had the human studies, then and only then would I allow it into the food supply, but with proper screening for defects, both genetic and anatomic. But none of that is suggested. And I think your viewers should be shocked that there's been no human safety studies anywhere, and yet it's being allowed.
Doesn't it sound like COVID all over again? Like it seems that there's a comment that's actually great. Let me just read it. Yeah, there you go. Trevor is saying their studies have already happened in real time. And that's what it seems to be the case now. If there's indeed no human studies or no long-term human studies for beef, the effect of cloned meats or derivative or children of cloned meats, what are they testing? Like if there's no testing, what are they
there's not.
testing then?
There's not. I mean, that's the whole point. Is this is absolutely reckless. And then let's also consider this, because it's one thing if they said, okay, like, so first of all, they should be upfront. They should be saying there are no human safety studies on cloned meat. There is no animal studies on cloned pork, safety studies. There really are no animal safety studies on beef. But we're going to allow it into the food supply, but we're going to require clear labeling so that Canadians have a choice. Now, that in itself would be absolutely reckless. But most people haven't thought through that the absence of labeling actually makes it mandatory that you're going to eat cloned meat. And here's how it works. Because, unless you're willing to become a vegetarian, which I know I'm not, then if I go to a restaurant and I can't know whether the meal I ordered has cloned meat or not, and if I go to the grocery store and I can't know if the steak or ground beef or hot dogs I'm buying has, cloned meat in it, then I'm really being forced to eat it because, I'm one of those people of the opinion that you can't get what you need without being, a carnivore. Whether you like it or not, I'm not going to be a vegetarian for health reasons. I fully appreciate the ethical concerns, and I sympathize with them. I wish I didn't have to eat meat, but most of us aren't willing to become vegetarians. So if you're not going to have labeling, then you're forcing us. You're literally forcing us to eat cloned meat, and that's where I think we've absolutely crossing the line. And we've also crossed that line with genetically modified plants. Because they don't require labeling, we have no choice. And that's why most of us have levels of glyphosate in us, or, BT toxin in us for the corn that, really are obnoxious. But we can't avoid it because it's not labeled.
What, every time I think about this, every time I hear a company or a government entity that is not sharing the information, that is willingly stopping from that is willingly lying, let's call a spade, that is willingly lying about what we're eating or what we're consuming, I always ask myself, what's the next step? I'm a sales engineer by trade. I like to know what the end goal is and then deconstruct it to reverse engineering what I was trying to do. So I do the same thing with what governments are trying to do to us. So if they have no problems lying to us with selling us clone meats, what do you think the next step is? What do you think their end goal is with all of this? Is it to sell us the lab grown meat? Because this is the only thing I can think of.
But this isn't lab grown meat. This is a different.
I know.
This is a different thing.
Oh, no. I'm fully aware. What we're talking about right now is we would be eating the offsprings of cloned animals.
No, they're actually talking the cloned animals themselves. You see, the offspring of cloned animals aren't necessarily classed. They're not classed as cloned animals. An offspring of a cloned animal is not a cloned animal. It's the offspring of a cloned animal and another animal that was bred naturally. They're talking about the clones themselves, Nico. And the offspring of cloned animals are way less prone to genetic defects because you've had one generation, of an animal making it to sexual maturity, plus combination with, normal DNA that should be fine. Unless you're, I guess it's the offspring of two cloned animals. That's a different issue. And so the offspring of cloned animals likely are way less dangerous than eating the cloned animals. They're actually talking about eating the cloned animals. Now, you're asking, well, why is this going on? I think the answers are in Health Canada's scientific opinion, which say and also bear in mind, like, it's expensive to clone. You got to go through, like, listen, you want to impregnate just cows naturally. You just put the bull in the field. I mean, it's not, it doesn't, the animals do their thing as they're supposed to do. Now, if you're the high dollar thing, you do this artificial insemination. So, I mean, like a big dollar bull, I mean, they will sell the semen and just artificially inseminate, but it's still semen and egg combining. But that's more expensive, and you just do it for your high-end animals. It's actually, it's pretty widespread, the artificial insemination, but it's still naturally bred, right? You're still using sperm from a bull and eggs from a cow. So cloning is expensive. Cloning is fraught with difficulties. The consumer doesn't want cloned meat. It's not like they're going to be able to charge a premium. If they labeled it, to get rid of it, they'd probably have to sell it for way less. So, you asked the perfect question, why? And I think the answers are in Health Canada's document. Their scientific document, they say, cloning could be really useful for biopharmaceuticals and biochemicals, and also for introducing genetic modifications into the population. And they refer to mDNA, not mRNA, but mDNA changes. Now, cloning is absolutely necessary for this. So let's say you're trying to create a cow that will have in its meat a specific, pharmaceutical. They call it a biopharmaceutical because they've now modified the DNA of the cow to create a specific drug. And they want that drug in the meat. Well, once they've succeeded, now that's a huge task for them to get the cow, to get a live adult cow that's, that actually, doesn't have defective organs and all of that, and is actually manufacturing a specific pharmaceutical within it, and it's not killing the cow. So they now literally have the golden calf, so to speak. I mean, they've accomplished something extremely difficult. The only way of replicating that, of getting that into our food supply, is cloning. Because once you start breeding that animal, the offspring aren't going to be making that perfect pharmaceutical drug, if at all. So the only way, once they've gotten there, is to clone. And we're not going to consent to getting drugs into us just because we're eating. We would avoid that meat if it had to be labeled, if cloned meat had to be labeled. So I think that they do things in stages, right? I mean, when I go to some stores like Superstore, they've got these gates that open automatically. Well, why are they putting them there? It makes it unfriendly. They're getting me accustomed to gates. So in the future, if they want us to have to show ID, which happened in Britain during COVID at one chain of stores, then I'm accustomed to the first step, right? That's why they're doing it. It could be that they were trying this rollout so that we would get accustomed. Hey, we accepted genetically modified plants. They're horrific. Like somebody close to me, if they eat in a restaurant too much, they get, they might as well have colitis. But if they stop and start eating at home organic, if they eat the GMO wheat, like flour or whatever, or things with it, they react. It's like a light switch. There's a lot of people that react to genetically modified plants in a negative way. Well, of course you'd react in a negative way. It kills your gut flora. I mean, the corn, the genetically modified corn, they have shown that the genetically modified corn makes an insecticide called Bt toxin. Studies have shown that when you eat it, the bacteria in your gut start making that toxin. So you actually become an insecticide factory, except you're absorbing it because it's being excreted in your gut. So, of course, some people react to it. Well, we allowed that. It's interesting that we're reacting to this cloned meat, but I think that, the mischief is they want to introduce biopharmaceuticals and biochemicals into the food supply, And to do that, they have to have us accepting eating cloned meat, and they can't be labeling it.
But hold on. So I appreciate the information you just gave us, but what I was trying to say is, do you, because there's a couple of things that we're going to have to revisit, as you mentioned a few things that I've never heard before. But before we do, what I was trying to say is, to me, the whole clone meat thing is just to get us, just like the gates you were talking about at Superstore. It's just trying to get us used to hearing clone meats, clone meat, clone meat, clone meat. And then just like GMO, most people don't react to it anymore. They assume that their food has some, and it's just, well, okay, the food I eat has GMO, but it's good for me, right? It's genetically modified to be good for me, because obviously that's what they tell us. But the point I'm trying to make is, when I go back to reverse engineering, I just always want to understand, what are they trying to accomplish? What's the end goal? And clone meat is expensive. It's not very well done yet. You still have to raise that cattle, right? It's not like you see in the sci-fi movie that they're in an accelerator and you just put the cells in, you click play, and it just zaps them to a full-size animal. You still have to have them come to maturity. So it reminds me, if you will, of an Amazon, for example. When they first started, they took a loss for years in order to destroy little mom and shop bookstores. And then next thing you know, they're the biggest supply chain company in the world. Like, they literally wrote the new supply chain. And I see the same thing with clone meat. Imagine not having to have the animal anymore, and you just do lab grown meat. Because everything that you mentioned, where you're saying that, and you correct me if I heard you wrong, but you mentioned that they're using clone meats in order to modify the genetic of those animal, let's say cow for sake of argument, so that when we consume them, we react to it, or we're basically taking pharmaceuticals. Like I'm thinking, because they were talking about tomatoes being able to carry the mRNA vaccine for COVID. So you didn't need to get vaccinated anymore. They could simply make it as part of the genetic code of a tomato. And while you're eating a tomato, guess what? You're getting your vaccine.
Yeah, and
you're getting
same
the
with
equivalent.
beef. Yep.
So that's what you're saying. So is it
that's what they're saying in their scientific opinion document as an advantage to cloning, because they're quite clear that cloning's difficult and fraught with difficulties, but hey, there are these advantages. You can create biopharmaceuticals and biochemicals and introduce genetic changes to the population. So this is their document. It's not my words. Anyone can read it. It's online. And it makes sense. And now it could be, because I think you're absolutely right that, this is a teaser balloon. If they could get us eating cloned meat, we will become used to it. Like even you and I, Nico, let's say they pressed ahead with this and we're having this conversation 5 years later, and both of us know we've eaten cloned meat by default because, we are going to go to a restaurant after all. And, I'm at that baseball game, I'm going to have a hamburger. Like they win. And then it's less of a deal for us. Like they do it because it works.
Of course. So is it that far-fetched to believe that the reason, not only are they bringing that because of the pharmaceutical aspect of things, but the fact that it's expensive, they want to reduce that cost at one point, the cost being the actual cloning itself, but the reward to that is that we're becoming used to the word cloning, and then 10 years from now, they start introducing lab-grown meat. Like, you don't even need the cow anymore. We don't care about the cow anymore. We don't need to have it at all. We will just produce the pieces of meat like the sirloin that people love to eat. That's it. We're just going to produce that. So how much easier is it at that point to genetically modify that piece of meat? And I'm going to air quote this because it ain't meat at that point, but to genetically modify it pharmaceutically because you don't need to worry about it being alive in the first place, because it's not really alive. So is it that far-fetched to believe that that's the
No,
next step?
no. I mean, that may or may not be, but I don't think anything is far-fetched anymore. I mean, we know they're already growing what they call, lab meat, right? Although that's just what they call it. I mean, they want complete control over our food supply. They want absolute complete control over our food supply, and ever so slowly that's been happening. I mean, I think they want to funnel us into 15-minute cities and clear the land. And that's just because that's what they say they want to do. So, sometimes I believe them. Now, and they want us to eat bugs. I mean, there's already bug farms and stuff like that. Like, I mean, all of this is happening. I don't understand. I truly don't get it. Like, I just don't get it. Like, what's wrong with what we're doing? But they're wanting to divorce us from regular food. I don't understand it. But what you're suggesting, I think they want to have lab-grown meat also. This might, right now, we might be talking about something different, but I think all bets are off with everything nowadays. I think our regulatory authorities have a completely different agenda, and it has nothing to do with protecting us, but it hasn't for a long time.
I just want to understand what the end goal is, because obviously it's all about control. It's all about keeping us safe. And if you look at the WHO has been saying since the 80s and the 90s that they want to reduce world population by 90% in order to not damage the earth. Because obviously, as much as I don't believe in human-caused climate change, we still have an impact on our planet, right? We still pollute. We still put a lot of crap in our water.
That's not the discussion, because all of us would agree.
No.
Whether we'd all agree, and let's try and avoid pollution.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that to me, it fits that whole agenda of reducing the population. Like, I've had that conversation many times, and the government can't just start shooting us in the street because we're a lot more than they are. We're going to fight back. But you look at what happened during COVID, for example, where a lot of people are becoming sterile right now based out of that vaccine. There's a lot of women they're having problems with their menstrual cycles now.
Oh, hey.
You have a lot of stillbirth, a lot of women that are bleeding for no reason. So that it affected our reproduction capabilities. Men are getting sterile, testosterone's down the drain. So you can't shoot us in the street, like I said, because we're going to do something. But all of this could be leading to that final solution of reducing that population.
But what you can do is you can make the food as toxic as possible without the population reacting. You can reduce the amount of nutrients in the food so that unless people are wise enough to get advice and supplement properly, they will develop chronic illnesses. And then you create a healthcare system where the only treatments, by and large, are surgery and synthetic chemicals, which really are toxic. I mean, it's interesting, the NHPPA that I'm with, we just did this online health show. Well, one of our speakers was Professor Alan Castles, who was saying, the third leading cause of death in Canada are the psychiatric drugs. Well, after the show, I approached him and said, can you point me in the direction of, I've heard other risk analysis experts basically say, that the synthetic drugs are, one of the 5 leading causes of death. Well, there's a professor at University of Copenhagen, and the Brownstone Institute published a paper of his that's very well documented, where he's suggesting, no, really the leading cause of death in Western nations are the chemical pharmaceutical drugs, the leading cause of death. So there's no question they are a leading cause of death. So you make our food toxic. You make our food so it's no longer food, so we're going to become chronically sick. And then you basically make it so that the only legal treatments are toxic chemicals, which are, if they're not the leading cause of death, they are a leading cause of death. And, this is all done by Health Canada, which is why I think they are the leading cause of death. So, I'm agreeing with you that it appears that they are going out of their way to shorten our lifespan. Now, can I share something with you about Health Canada and that vaccine that you probably have not heard before?
Go for it.
Okay, so the public messaging was safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective. I almost want to throw up. And I'm sure that if we pulled up the Health Canada website right now, they actually have a separate page on the Health Canada website for every COVID vaccine they've approved. And they used to say, and I imagine they still say at the top, they have a little banner saying all COVID-19 vaccines approved by Health Canada have been proven to be safe and effective. Now, this is political messaging. For all of the COVID vaccines are termed new drugs, and everyone agrees, Health Canada agrees, they're new drugs. Normally, pre-COVID, if you wanted to get a new drug approved, you had to go through the new drug approval process, which if you pull up our drug regs, they start at C.08.001. And when you read those, you have to give the minister, substantive evidence showing safety and, a lot of evidence showing efficacy. So because that's our regular process, most Canadians just accepted the propaganda that these vaccines would have gone through that process where you have to prove safety and efficacy. Now, in the drug approval world, there's a third thing that has to be proven. It's not in the regulations, but it's required by criminal law, both domestic and international. And that is, for a drug for the general population, the benefits have to outweigh the risks, because you can't introduce into the general population a drug where the risks exceed the benefits, or you'd be committing criminal negligence, and or criminal negligence causing bodily harm and or homicide. So that's not written into the regulations. It's just Health Canada and drug approval people understand this. Now we enter COVID about a month before the first two applications for approval with a vaccine, and I think the first were Pfizer and Moderna. The Minister of Health issued an interim order exempting all COVID drugs from having to go through the regular process. Now, they could still choose to go through the regular process. It's not like they didn't have to, or they couldn't, but there was a separate pathway, drug approval pathway for COVID drugs. Now, I'm going to quote to you what the test is, and I might have one or two meaningless words wrong, but it's going to be pretty damn close. And what's interesting is the word safety is not there, and the word efficacy is not there. In fact, when you read the interim order, which is still online, because this is law. So, anyone can find this. It'll take you 15 minutes. I wrote a discussion paper, which is likely still on the NHPPA site, under resources, discussion papers, and just dig back, where I have links in the discussion paper to these documents. But before I quote the test to you, I want to make two things clear. The first thing I want to make clear is this is a mandatory test. So let's use Pfizer as an example. So if Pfizer can meet this test, Health Canada has to issue a license, even if they think it's a bad idea. So by law, they have to if this test is met. And the second thing I wanted to point out is when you read the interim order, a company like Pfizer didn't even have to submit their safety data to get approved. Well, of course they wouldn't, and you'll see it in there. No, you didn't have to prove your safety data as long as you explained, how you're going to get it to them later. And the safety data you would have to is just the known safety data, but you didn't have to prove safety. So the mandatory test, so Pfizer's applying to get their COVID-19 vaccine approved, and what they have to prove is this. And like I said, I might get the odd word wrong, but I might have it perfect. I didn't know we were having this conversation. I'm going by memory, but I've read it so many times. So it begins with the minister. Now, the minister means Health Canada. So I'm going to say Health Canada. Health Canada has sufficient evidence to support the conclusion. I'm going to stop there. We're already in trouble because if what follows has to be proven, it should say the minister has sufficient evidence to conclude, meaning you got to convince the minister of what follows. But it doesn't say that. It says the minister has sufficient evidence to support the conclusion. So now we're in some subjective land where Pfizer just has to make the argument. So it's not the minister has sufficient evidence to conclude. It doesn't say the minister has to conclude of what follows. We're in a subjective test here. So we're really just, Pfizer has to be able to make the argument. So I'll read the whole thing or recite the whole thing. The minister has sufficient evidence to support the conclusion that the benefits of the new drug outweigh the risks, having regard to the uncertainties concerning the benefits and risks and the urgent public health emergency presented by COVID-19. There's no word safety there. There's no word efficacy there. Even though there's risk-benefit language, you can't do a risk-benefit analysis without knowing the safety profile and without knowing the benefit profile. And the words are in there, having regard to the uncertainties regarding the benefits and risks. In the regular drug approval world, if you don't know safety, if you don't know efficacy, if there's any uncertainty about any of this, there's no approval. This was a political direction to Health Canada to approve. You could have Windex approved. So it's the public messaging that was misleading. It was Health Canada and Evernow saying they're proven to be safe and effective. Whether they were or were not safe or effective, and I think they were worse than not safe and worse than not effective. I actually think they were very effective for their intended purpose, which was not to inoculate or prevent anyone from getting COVID. It was the public messaging that was so offensive. So here you had Health Canada, which I'm sure is still on their website today for every single COVID vaccine they've approved, saying they've all been proven to be safe and effective. That's a lie. In my opinion, that's absolutely false. They know as a fact they haven't been proven to be safe or effective. And yet that messaging was there for political ends. But think of what was happening when the minister exempted them. It was a queen then. We didn't have a king yet. Her Majesty's government had purchased the vaccines before they were approved. Before Her Majesty's government purchased the vaccines, Her Majesty's government was telling us all in public messaging that we were in this absolute crisis, but the vaccines were an answer. And then the government purchases the vaccines, and then the government distributed them to the provinces. The interim order had to exempt them. It's illegal to purchase a drug that hasn't been approved. It's illegal to distribute a drug that hasn't been approved. They had to exempt themselves from that law. Do you think there was any chance they weren't going to approve these vaccines? But they couldn't get through the regular drug approval process. So to ensure that they weren't committing internal fraud, they created a political test, which basically was a political directive to approve the vaccines they had already purchased, that they had already distributed, that they had already promised the Canadian population was the only way out of this. The whole thing, like that people can't see how absolutely crazy this was. I don't know, Nico.
It's happening everywhere you look. At the end of the day, everywhere you seem to look, it's happening. And the end goal always seems to be the same. Depopulation. It all seems to be the goal that they've been talking about since the 80s.
So here's the point. You see, and I don't disagree with you. I hold the same opinion that I believe what's going on here is population control. What I can't get my head around is why more people don't see it, and why do we care that Health Canada, was saying, well, let's allow cloned meat without labeling? Isn't that just more evidence that they're actually an adversarial organization that is there to cause you and your family harm? I don't care where you are on the COVID debate, because there's still a lot of division there. I'm just explaining, and like I say, that discussion paper should be on the nhppa.org site. There's a resources and then a sub-tab discussion paper. Other than, I've been an expert witness in some COVID law case to explain this. I don't know of anywhere else where anyone's actually set out, no, the test, you didn't have to prove safety and efficacy, because at least people should know the truth. And again, I don't care whether you took the vaccine or didn't, or whether you supported it or you didn't. I mean, the reality is there was no division between vaccinated people and unvaccinated people. The division was between people that watched the mainstream news and people who didn't, because we all act predictably, Nico, and we were all acting the same way. So let me share this, because the vaccinated shouldn't hate the unvaccinated, and the unvaccinated shouldn't hate the vaccinated. I'm going to generalize, but I just want to illustrate how people were having the same experience. Because, people that were in the vaccinated camp, and again, I apologize, I'm generalizing, but you're going to see, that generally what I'm speaking is true. The people in the vaccinated camp honestly believed that there was this dangerous pathogen named COVID-19 that posed, a real threat to their lives and the lives of their family. And so they're afraid. They're genuinely afraid of this virus. But you know what? There's a solution. There's this vaccine. We've got this vaccine. And I can be safe, and my children could be safe if only those unwashed, unvaccinated people would get in line and get the vaccine. No, but we're just talking about what the belief is, and then I'm going to switch to the unvaccinated. You're going to see we're having the exact same experience, just the facts were a little different. So those unvaccinated people were putting me and my children at risk. And of course, then you're afraid, and then the hatred comes. Of course, you're going to hate those people. Now, let's switch that around. And again, I'll be generalizing, but those unvaccinated people, they honestly believed, Nico, they honestly believed that vaccine posed a threat. Like they honestly believed that vaccine could, literally kill them or their kids. But there's no problem, because in Canada, you don't have to take a medical treatment. They can't force you. Oh, wait a second. You send your kids to school, they're going to vaccinate your kids without telling you. You're going to lose your job. And we learned at the National Citizens Inquiry, it was the social pressure that led most people. It wasn't the economic. But we would be safe if only those vaccinated people would leave us alone and not vaccinate our kids at school without our consent, and wouldn't be forcing us to do it to keep our jobs, and wouldn't be ostracizing us from our families. If only they weren't pushing us, we'd be safe. And now we're afraid, and then we hate. Now you tell me how that experience was any different. We both had the same experience. It didn't matter what camp you were in. We were having the same experience. The only difference is we believe different facts, but if we believed the other's facts, we would have acted the exact same way. And we were just totally gamed by our government ramping up this fear. But we have to get over ourselves and stop being divided over this.
As much as I agree with you, I don't see it happening. There's two, but the reason being that, like my co-host, for example, Rob is vaccinated. I wasn't. Like, I lost everything, and like I said, I'm a sales engineer by trade. I had a career. I didn't just have a job. This is something I was into for 20 years, right? So I lost a very lucrative job, or very lucrative career, and he couldn't care less. He didn't do, like, he took the vaccine, he took some of the CERB payments. He's like, let bygones be bygones. But then I look at people around me that put me in a corner. I didn't care. Personally, I never cared. If you get vaccinated or not, I don't care. At the end of the day, don't care. Don't care. You want to put something in your body? I'm a live and let live type of guy. I just draw the line as to what you think I should do for myself. Once once you take as good care of yourself as I do me, we'll talk. Until then, fuck off with your vaccine. Go suck one. That was my policy from the get go. But the point I want to make here is that it's easy for the people that got the vaccine, that got to keep their, and why ever you got it, that's up to you. You believe in it, social pressure, whatever it is. It's easy for them to tell the people like me that didn't get vaccinated, that lost everything over it, to say, get over it, because it showed me the type of people we're dealing with.
But just wait. But I'm a person that didn't get vaccinated and have had consequences. Now, Nico. So let's just back up and deconstruct, because the first thing to understand is we're predictable, which is why this control works. And you and I would have gotten the vaccine if we believed what other people believed. So we just understand that you believe that the mainstream media was issuing propaganda and these people were fooled. And that's what I believe.
But I don't believe it. That's a fact. It's not even a belief.
Okay. So I'm willing to accept that. But then do you understand that they're the victims? They're the victims of a psychological warfare campaign. You know, one of the witnesses that I called at the National Citizens Inquiry, Dr. Malone, I didn't call him about mNRA. I called him about fifth generation warfare because he's an expert at that. He testified at the Toronto hearings. You know, he was sharing, I think there are exhibits that can be accessed on his testimony page. He was actually sharing mainstream Canadian news articles during COVID about how the Canadian military was running a high-grade psyops against the Canadian populace. It's like they have to. It's like they have to tell you what's going on. Like, what do you do? Like, are you reading, you know, in your Sunday paper, having your coffee at your table? Oh yeah, the Canadian military is running a military-grade psyops against me. And then, like, what? Do you turn the next page and read the hockey scores? Like, it works. And one thing I learned at the National Citizens Inquiry, like, you know, a lot of vaccinated people testified because we didn't care which side you were on. We just wanted your stories. And a lot of them were explaining how they really felt coerced. And then those that were injured, the system won't acknowledge to this day that the vaccine caused injuries, because we're still jabbing kids today. We're still pushing it. So they're treated like lepers. They're told that they have psychiatric problems. The way they're treated is just absolutely awful. And if we're divided, you see what's happening right now is our culture, our civilization is being taken down so that it can be remolded. Certainly depopulation is a huge part of that. But if we don't get rid of all of our divisions, we're going to be lost. And the second commandment is love your neighbor like yourself. And we are going, those people are going to need so much love going forward that it's absolutely crazy. And we also have a command to forgive others. And I feel obligated to share, and it's not for you, it's for your audience. I feel obligated to share, the story about, the master that went to settle his accounts. And this is just a parable of Christ. Can I share it?
Yeah, but before you do, you have to let me challenge you a bit, because they're not victims. They're absolutely not victims. At one point, we need to draw a line in the sand to say that, yes, sure, there's certain times that people are victim, but they were complacent, they were lazy, they chose to believe. That was a choice. As much as people tell me that it was a choice for me not to get vaccinated and lose everything, I still agree to this day. I made the choice to not go with the narrative and think for myself. That is a choice that I made. I paid the price for it. That's what my belief cost me. same thing is true for them. I'm not a victim. I don't consider myself a victim of what happened. I took a decision, I made the decision, and I live with the consequences, and I have no regrets. You know, I posted that yesterday. I know a lot of people that regretted taking the vaccine. I don't know one that regrets not taking it. And just the comments that I got, I did it on purpose. I was there to piss people off with that comment because I knew unvaccinated people would talk. And the narrative has not changed. It's still the same thing. They still believe, they still want to believe what they were told 4 years ago because they don't want to admit to themselves that they fucked up, that they took something that they would have never taken if they weren't scared. And that's why they took it. So I don't agree with you that they're victims, because they're not victims. At this point, we have to give credit to people that it's not ignorance anymore.
So,
the information is out there. If you choose to stop watching football, to stop watching hockey, to stop watching baseball, to stop watching all the new TV shows and do some research like I do for hours a day, and I've been doing that for decades now, that's a choice. You make that choice, but that's a conscious choice that I make every single day. They're not victims. As much as I agree with you, I'm a Christian, I will forgive others like I would forgive myself, but that doesn't mean I forget. And that's the point I'm trying to make, is that I forgive all the people that I lost my job over what they wanted me to do. I forgive my family for not wanting to deal with me because I was unvaccinated. You should have heard what I heard from my own family because I was the black sheep and decided not to get vaccinated. I forgive them all for it. At the end of the day, forgiveness is not about forgiving others. It's very selfish. Forgiving is mostly for yourself, to remove that from your head because it has no impact anymore. It's in the past, let it be. But I will never forget what people did because I'm not stupid. You know, I'll make a mistake once, shame on me. I'm not making that mistake twice. I'm not going to the third time. So all I'm saying is, as much as they did what they did, I did what I did, I'm not a victim. Neither are them. I paid the consequences for my actions already. Most of them have not. Their consequences are going to come later, because I think we can agree that the next 5-ish years is not going to be good for those triple boosted out there.
So you said a lot and give me an opportunity to respond, and I'm enjoying this.
And then we have to stop because we're over time. But I'll have you back on because I like to be challenged and challenge others. So yes, go ahead and respond.
You know, I really think we can't underestimate how effective they are at manipulating the mind. You know, I remember, I don't know if it was a year ago. When was they circulate that monkeypox every now and again. I was watching the High Wire, and Dell was just showing, the monkeypox is raising its head again. And he showed maybe 2 minutes of different news clips, mainstream news clips, where they're raising this alarm on monkeypox. After 2 minutes, I have to tell you, I was terrified, even though cognitively, I knew that he's just, showing us how they're ramping us up. It's so effective what they've done. I actually, during one of the openings at the National Citizens Inquiry 2 years ago, I asked the question, is watching the mainstream media consistent with you being alive in 3 years? I don't think it is. But I think that, you can't underestimate how effective they are. And these people, they're still being brainwashed on almost everything. It's all by design to close their minds and take control of their minds. And then when they have been hurt by this, those that know they've been hurt by this, they're being treated as lepers by this. They're being terribly mistreated. And I get that there's a place of personal responsibility, but you and I, if we had a different life, we could be in that camp where we find that we've done something believing that's what we should do and having no idea that it was wrong. So I'm just saying that, but I need to share that parable because there's nothing more important than getting that out. So for those of you who don't know, I think that you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this was when Peter came to Christ and basically said, how many times do we have to forgive somebody who keeps wronging us? Like up to 7 times, as if that was a lot. And Christ says, no, 70 times 7. And he didn't mean like 490. He meant there is no end. And then he gives this parable. He says, there's this master, and I'll just pick modern amounts. This master that wanted to settle accounts with his servants. And so he's having everyone that owes him money brought before him. And this one guy's brought before him and he says, listen, you owe me 350 grand and I want you to pay up. And back then you could be imprisoned and your family imprisoned if you couldn't pay a debt. Well, there's no way this servant could pay this. And he's just realizing, wait a second, like my life's ending. I'm going to be thrown in prison here. So he does all he can do is he falls down on his knees and he starts weeping and he begs his master. He says, like, have mercy on me. I can't repay you. And the master's moved with sympathy and says, okay, I forgive your debt. Go in peace. And this guy, he's literally heading out and he runs across another servant that owes him $3,500. And he's feeling financially challenged now. And he says, hey, you owe me $3,500. I like repay now. This is it. I'm settling. And the guy can't repay. And he realizes he's in trouble. He could be thrown in prison and his family with him. So he does all he can do. He falls on his knees. He's weeping and he's begging, please, I can't pay you. Have mercy. And the guy doesn't. He says no. And the guy is taken off to debtor's prison. Well, other servants see this and they're like, what the heck? He was just forgiven 350 grand. He won't forgive 3,500. So the master learns of this and he's dragged back in front of the master. It's like, what's going on here? And so off to prison you go. And Christ is giving this just to draw the thing, our debts, we owe God such a debt because we all know of all the awful things we do that we're unhappy with, that we don't even want to talk about. And yet we won't forgive others for really what's a small debt. It's a command. And it does help us, Nico, but he also requires it of us for us to be forgiven. Lord's Prayer, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those. But it's a beautiful thing because we've all been forgiven if we ask.
But at the same time, I'm not disagreeing with you, but that doesn't mean I will forget. That's the difference. I will forgive others because, again, forgiving is as much as it is for others as it is for you. But forgetting is stupid. You can't forget what people have done.
I don't even know what you mean by forgetting, because intellectually we're going to remember what happened, but we let go of it, right?
So let's say you come up to me and you want $1,000. I say, yep, no problem. Give me a month, I'll give it back to you. Okay, cool, no problem. No problem. I get back to you 5 weeks after, you still don't have it. And it drags on. And one day you pay me back. Okay, cool. A year later, you're like, hey, can I have $1,000?
Well, you're not going to lend me $1,000 because you've learned your lesson. But that doesn't mean you haven't forgiven me for, dragging you out before. It's like,
my point. No, but that's my point exactly. You and I can still be friends, no problem. I'm not going to hold it against you. I just know better than to lend you money. So
yeah, I don't think we're saying different things.
No, it's just you cannot. When you say forgive, it doesn't mean forget, because you can't be naive in thinking that people do change. Because I think the average person does not change unless they don't have a choice. Unless they're, the theory that people don't change until it's harder to stay the same than to change. When it becomes easier to change than to continue hurting, you change. But until then, if it hurts less to continue doing the same thing, you will continue doing the same thing because there's no value in changing.
That's well said. And isn't it nice that God puts us through turmoil?
Indeed. But so all to say that I'll never consider myself a victim because I took decisions that
I'm not calling you a victim.
No, what I'm saying is if I'm not a victim for the choices that I've made, and when I say I'm not a victim, I don't regret. As rough as the past few years has been, I would never want to do it you could give me the option to go back and change it. I wouldn't. I would leave it the way it is, because this is who made me what I am right now as we speak. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here. But at the same time, the people that did decide to take it are not victims either, because they made a choice. There's a big amount of personal responsibility. And I agree with you. A lot of them are brainwashed, indoctrinated from school, and then television, cell phone, social media continued doing it. It never ends, right? But at one point, you have to take responsibility that it's your fault. You can it's not like there's no, as much as, for example, social media can be extremely good to live in an echo chamber.
But Nico, to what end here? Because what we have here is we've got a large group of people who are injured. Many know they're injured. They know there's something wrong. Many don't know yet that there's something wrong. A vast majority of those don't know why they're injured. They're not connecting it to the vaccine, which will prevent them from actually solving the problem. And the system's not going to tell them the problem. And so so regardless of how we feel about it, I think we need to be prepared going forward, like starting today, to be really bold in sharing the truth, not being afraid anymore, because we have an obligation to help. And they can't be helped until they know. And
they can't be helped until they decide they want to be helped. Believe me, I fight that battle every single day of my life.
It's sure getting easier though, isn't it? Like a couple of years ago, you couldn't even raise this issue but I find that people are way more open now.
No, it's not. The only reason that it is because there's no restrictions anymore. I guarantee you that if it went down again, people would suck it up and do the exact same thing.
Oh, perhaps.
That's what I'm saying. Right now, it seems that it's easier because the restrictions are not in place anymore. Look at social media, for example. They're allowing those conversations. I got banned off my massive account on Facebook because I kept on talking against the vaccine. This is how I started creating content. So they eventually banned me. Now, I could say the exact same thing on a new account. No problem. I don't get in trouble anymore. So all those things have been relaxed. But I guarantee you that the next pandemic, because it's just a matter of time, they've said it multiple times that this was just a precursor. There's a good reason the Canadian government just signed the WHO new legislation saying that we will follow their wisdom when it comes to the next pandemic and pandemic response, like what they expect us to do in a case of emergency. It's going to be the same thing. I don't see this changing. We had between 80 to 91% of Canadians that had one vaccine. Those are the numbers that I keep on seeing. So let's call it 80%. Let's take the lowest of the two. That means 4 out of 5 people took it. And I guarantee you that the vast majority of them is not because they believed in it, is because they were scared or they didn't want to lose their way of life. That 2 weeks to curve, the 2 weeks to flatten the curve to you'll need a passport, a vaccination passport to go to the restaurant. That's the part that people took it for. Let's be honest here. I would love to see those polls put together as in, why did you take it? Because I guarantee you half of it at least was out of fear or they didn't want to lose their way of life.
A lot of it was social pressure. But, the interesting thing is I think that, obviously they're trying to, you and I both think they're trying to depopulate us, that our government really is adversarial. So, but, I see history. It goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I also know that God's moving in the land. So I don't think we can, conclude that, they're going to succeed again. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But, people like you are waking people up. And, even just by sharing knowledge, there'll be a certain percentage of viewers that aren't going to comply and will actually, here I'm Fighting Health Canada. There's already underground networks of ivermectin and all the like, because they know that the government's going to take it away. And sure, the odd person that gets found out is going to get hammered. And the same thing's going to happen with natural supplements and real food. We're just going to do what's necessary. And, we may hit that tipping point. Like, I think what you're doing is so important. Really pleased to be on your show. And, even though we banter back and forth, you're doing a great service. And it's because of people like you that it might not go down the way they want it to go down next time.
And I hope you're right, because that's why I do it. But I can't, if there's one thing I've learned, I cannot convince anybody of anything. The only thing I can do is try to raise doubt in people's mind. And if I have to be the bad person that you're so pissed off and so irritated by what I say that you have to go research it to prove me wrong, so be it. I will take it. That's fine by me. I'm okay with being that person. I'm happy to be that professional asshole, because that's basically, I'm like this in real life. Like, what people see on camera is a lighter version of what I am in real life. I'm a lot worse in real life. I just have to tone myself down to not get banned everywhere. But yeah, I appreciate talking to you. It's the second time we speak. I appreciate I like to tell people I disagree, and I like to have a civil conversation as to why we disagree and explain our points. That's why we do what we do here. So I appreciate you coming on the show for the second time. We'll have you again. And yeah, same to you. You need to continue doing the good work, because we know that Health Canada needs to be challenged. So yeah.
Yeah, and I just encourage your audience. I mean, we have a responsibility, so start doing it. We're in an information war.
100%. 100,000,000,000%. You're absolutely right. So hopefully we can put some good information out there. Thanks for your time, Shawn. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Nico. Absolute pleasure. Enjoyed the conversation.
Us right back at you. Thank you for the people in the comment section. And guys, we will see you on, what are we, Thursday? So we're off tomorrow. We will see you on Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. We'll see you there, guys. Peace.
So